Oh my god, she's a weirdo.
You need a diary. Minimum 300 entries on the Nick and Amy story. Start with the fairy tale, early days. Those are true, and they're crucial. You want Nick and Amy to be likable. After that, you invent the spending, the abuse, the fear, the threat of violence.
Hello, 'tis I, Fat Cow. The clip I just showed was from the film Gone Girl, which is based on a book and is a psychological thriller that explores a very dysfunctional marriage where the lead antagonist is a very obvious psychopath and a narcissist and leaves a very elaborate evidence in order to frame her husband for her murder. It also explores in depth how the media perceives the evidence that's been placed to frame the husband and how people automatically assume guilt. Now, that particular clip was of the main character, Amy Dunn, falsifying a journal. She's quite clever about it because she writes the journal entries over a period of time of days, switching pens, writing, sitting up, lying down, changing position. So handwriting will alter so that it looks like it was done over a long period of time and not all maybe written in one night hurriedly as evidence to prove something. You know where I'm going with this, don't you? Yes. Amberlynn fucking Reid and her bloody journals completely ignoring the fact that a journal is not evidence, concrete evidence, beyond a reasonable doubt type evidence at all. The journal that she read from, very peculiarly, I might add, she held it in front of her face upright. People don't read aloud like that. They read aloud like this. Not like that. This. Well, yeah, the handwriting was obviously very rushed. In the same pen for every individual day, which is possible, obviously. If somebody is anal enough, they will have a special journal pen. But still, it's interesting all the pages were written in the same pen. I'm very inclined to lose stuff very easily. And so if I had a journal, which I don't, because I just can't keep up with that shit, there'd be lots of different pens. But that's circumstantial. I don't want to talk about the points that have been made by other channels that the journal itself looks falsified, because it does. There is no question about it. The journal, one, isn't distressed enough to be open and shut, the spine isn't distressed enough to have been repetitively open. And I'm of the opinion that the pages that have been written on haven't been opened enough. You understand what I mean? It's not the pages, when you look at the spine and the top bit, when you can see the individual pages when it's open, just doesn't look like it's been used enough. When you spread open an A4 journal and lay it flat and write on it, it becomes gappy between each individual page. And when you put it back together, you can see those. And when you open it up, you can see those. And it just doesn't look like an older journal. It looks like something that the pages, had multiple entries on opposite pages, same pages. It looks like everything was written in one go on the pages. But that's me being incredibly picky. I want to talk about how she read out the journal entries. One, her eyes, when you could see this bit because of how she was holding up the book. Again, nobody reads out aloud like that unless they have really bad eyesight. But she has no trouble reading out stuff normally. Her eyes didn't move in terms of reading from left to right. Her eyes didn't move. She might have written those words in her journal in one go. She wasn't reading from those. She was just talking. She was reciting her story from memory. She wasn't reading that part of the journal in some incidences. And the way she was talking, the candor of her voice, the different shifts in tone, the pacing, was not the pacing of somebody reading out something they wrote themselves. It was very not stuttery, but it was very it didn't flow. It didn't flow. There was thinking going on behind it, not just reading what was written. It's more thinking about or trying to remember. It was very unconvincing reading of a story. It would have been more convincing had she'd been reading from a book she'd never read before, and therefore didn't know what was going to be said if she was the sort of person that reads aloud very poorly. But it's her own fucking words. I legitimately thought that not only, as some people have said, that she wrote it after the fact. I think she wrote it over the course of maybe 2 days, possibly even the night before, because she's that kind of person, to back up what has been said retrospectively. She's attempted to answer things that have been said the day before and the day before that, things that have been revealed. It's so fucking obvious. Now to talk about some things that was said. It's a lot of Emily did this, Emily did that, Emily did this, Emily did that. And as a consequence of Emily doing this, I behaved this way. And of course, Amberlynn being Amberlynn says this was her BPD. To which I say, complete and utter bumfluff. Now, I'm speaking from experience as somebody who had a very long-term relationship with a narcissist. This is narcissistic behavior, not BPD behavior. This is narcissistic behavior. I'll tell you a little story that kind of proves my point. We'll ignore all the circumstances around how this conversation occurred because it's very complicated and very messy. But this individual, you know who he is, told me that he had beaten his mistress. Told you it was messy. And the pair of them shared the same friend group. And she had told their friend group what had happened. Okay? So he beat her and she told everybody. His response to this event, not the beating, but the friends being told, was, and this is verbatim, because he was very annoyed, she had told everybody, but he was more annoyed at how the friends took the story. He said angrily, because angrily was his default, no one came to me to ask me what she had done to make me act that way. You see, the narcissistic thought process is, yeah, I did something, but the other person made me. As if you have no control over what you do whatsoever. Other examples, because he's an incredibly pleasant individual, and I have many stories, was, and I'll group it, separate things, because his justification was the same every time. He had slapped his sister. On another occasion, he had pushed her against the wall. He had slapped his ex-girlfriend, the one before me. He beat me. And his excuse, his justification, his reasoning every time for those incidences were, and I quote, she, or me, or they, were being a cunt. I slapped my sister because she was being a cunt. I pushed my sister against the wall because she was being a cunt. I slapped my ex-girlfriend because she was being a cunt. I beat you because you were being a cunt. Different circumstances from Amber? Absolutely. But it's an awfully familiar behaviour, don't you think? Not for somebody who has BPD, though. No. It's very, very common, documented by psychiatry behaviour from somebody who can be classified as a narcissist. And that is all I have to say about this particular individual. Now, the reason I spoke about Amber first is because Foodie, in her last live, gave us very, very little to talk about, except for two things I just want to put out there that people can keep, in their mind. The first thing was that she doesn't get particularly upset about the conditions she's living in Syria, because she doesn't think it's that bad, and then lists why it's not that bad for her in Syria, a country that suffered war for over a decade, is struggling financially, has food supply issues, and is currently experiencing the worst drought it has experienced since 1989. She has a 65-inch screen TV, air conditioning, solar paneling, food and water. So Syria's not that bad for her because she has luxuries. Read the room, Foodie. Have some decency. Oh, who am I talking to? Let's ignore the point I was trying to make. There is no point. Foodie's being Foodie. Disgusting, in other words. The other thing I want to point out, and she corrected herself or clarified what she had just said, let's say, after people started asking her whether or not Pete was going to move in. She said and I quote, "Just let me settle in and make sure it's permanent." What a weird thing to say when you intend to move somewhere to live. Let me settle in and make sure it's permanent. The apartment, is that permanent? Staying in Canada, that's not permanent. She then elaborated when she'd realised what she said. No, I know it's permanent. It's Pete who wants to make sure it's permanent because, last time I left, only after a week of renting somewhere. Now, we all know, or you should know, that when Foodie says things and then elaborates or corrects herself, it's the first thing she said that's the truth. And then she realises she fucked up saying the truth and immediately corrects herself. It's one of the things she does. She'll say something, immediately correct it mid-sentence, or correct it slightly less, later when she's realised what she said. So the "let me settle in and make sure it's permanent" is the truth. The "it's Pete who wants to see if it's permanent" business isn't. And I just thought that was a very telling thing to say. So this, in my opinion, is the gist of the situation. I admit that I am possibly incorrect. The Foodie's not going to leave Syria at all. I think she is going to go to Canada. But its permanence is all based on whether or not Salah can also come to Canada later. Should the application to immigration fail, I say should, it will. So actually, when the application to Syria fails, Foodie will go back to Syria. She hopes it's permanent, being in Canada, because that means Salah is in Canada with her. But it won't be, because he's not getting in. Not even remotely. There's no chance on earth that a Syrian man who has already applied twice, has often spoken, let's say, out of turn on the internet, and has been reported by many people as being somebody who is criminally inclined to do things fraudulently and is 99.99% reoccurring, a romance scammer. I don't know why I said it like that. He's not getting in. I can say that till I'm blue in the face. He's not. Anyway, so Foodie hopes it's permanent. It won't be. And she will go back to Syria because she has no self-worth. Because a single Foodie Beauty, apparently in Foodie Beauty's mind, is less desirable and has less worth than a Foodie Beauty who is with a man despite the fact he can't fucking stand her, doesn't love her, thinks she's about as attractive as a boil on the whole bit of a bottom. A boil on the rectum is what I'm implying. Although with Salah, it's hard to tell what he thinks is appealing. Because I was going to say it's attractive as a pile of shit, but yeah, we all know that that isn't particularly disgusting to him. So she'd rather be seen as being in a relationship than being seen as single. So she's going to go back to Syria when this all falls through. Have an incredibly good day, guys. 13 days in, another 18 to go. So we're not halfway yet. I might run out of little hats and things. I'm trying my best. I might end up wearing two at the same time in order to be different. But we're getting there.